In this video, you will learn how to properly align, space, and position elements in CSS without frustration. If you have ever struggled to center something or make a layout work, Flexbox is the solution. It makes positioning elements easy and flexible. Now, before Flexbox, the way we would typically create layouts in CSS is through the use of things like floats, which are another CSS property, but they are not quite as efficient as Flexbox. So floats and tables, but they are not. They don't do it as efficient as Flexbox does it. By the end of this video, you'll be able to understand how Flexbox works step by step and be able to build responsive layouts effortlessly. Let's dive in. All right, so what we can see here, we have a simple HTML tags or boilerplate. If I go towards the code, you can see that we have a single div container, and then each item, 1, 2, 3, 4, is within that container. So these 4 items here, they are within a div container. So quickly, I'm going to style this item class, which I use in 4 places here. So this is my CSS. I've connected to it. So this is the item. I'm going to give it a width of 100 pixels. 100 pixels. I'm going to give it a height of 100 pixels as well. Okay. I'm going to give it a background color of blue. Color of blue. Then lastly, I'm going to give it a margin. Margin of 5. Let's make it 7. Margin of 7 pixels. All right, so let's see what we have now. I think, oh, I haven't connected my CSS file. Should have done that before I started this actually. All right, so let's try that again. Now this is what we have in place as at now. Okay, so now I'm going to introduce the flex property. But before that, let me remove this padding, this margin. I'm going to put it back, but let me just show you something. So the space in between the blocks is made by this property here, margin. So then I'm going to select this flex container, this container class here. This is the container, and these are the items within it. I'm going to take the class and let me put it above here. Since let me expand this back. That container, and I'm going to give it a display of flex. Now observe what that does when I refresh this. So it centers it's for creating layout. It makes it not centered per se, but like it's a way of spreading our items in a horizontal fashion across the page. This is what Flexbox is for, creating layouts. Like I said, back in those days, you would normally use flex or tables to space things out in a tabular form, but flex is it's more easier to use, if I may say. So that's the first property I will discuss on Flexbox. Now, when we are dealing with Flexbox, it's important to know that this direction, this by default, this is what we refer to as the main axis, this horizontal direction. Then from top to down is what we call the cross axis. The cross axis. So this Flexbox now, it has taken up this flex container has taken up from here to here. This is the main axis, and top to down is the cross axis. Now I can decide to align these items across the main axis. As you can see now, by default, it's at the beginning. This beginning is known as the start. This is known as the end. This is known as the center. Remember, across the main axis. But let me just show you what I'm trying to say. If I do say justify content center. Now I'm moving this item from here to here. Refresh center. Let me add this margin back so that we can identify the 4 main items. So it adds space top left. So this margin 7 means I'm adding space top, right, left, and right and left across the item, 7 pixels across. And let me just go off point for a minute. This margin property now, it can take 4 values. You can take 1, 2, 3, or 4 values. If I give it just 1 value, it's going to apply spacing across an item. If I give it 7 pixels and I say 6 pixels, it's going to apply a spacing of 7 pieces on the vertical axis. That means top and below. While 6 pieces on the right and the left. For instance, now if I refresh this, it should shrink a little bit on the left, on the right and left. Observe, both sides shrink. Now, because I'm applying to the item is a class applied all across this item, so it would apply for all 4 of them. Then if I give it a third value of say 1 pixels, it's going to just apply a spacing on the top, on the right, and on the bottom, and it's not going to touch the left hand side. Just top, right, and left. It's like in a clockwise fashion, top, right, and bottom. If I refresh this side, the right hand side will not be affected. So it only touched the bottom. That's hard to see because there's no border. But let me just add a border across the container. Border say a border of a 5 pixels solid black. I refresh this. Okay, there we go. Let me increase this to say 6. Observe the bottom. You see? And if I reduce this to 1, it goes down. Then if I decide to put a fourth value of 40 pixels, let me just say 9 pixels. Okay. This one would affect the left hand side. So there's spacing in the left hand side of things. All right, so let me just get back to what I was doing. That's just a quick tutorial on how the margin, and it also applies for the padding as well. So where were we? Okay, this is the flex. The flex, when I give the display of flex, it automatically aligns. And I said this is the main axis from right to left, main axis by default, right? We can change that, but from right to left is the main axis by default, and from top to bottom is the cross axis. Now we gave it a property of justify content center, which centered it from start. By default, the value is at the start value, but I centered it. I can also send it to the end value. Observe. So I can give it a value of from center to flex end. If I refresh this, it's going to go to the end of the. All right, so this is it now. Remember, it starts at the default position is flex start. That's the start position. I can move it to the center with justify content center. I can move it to the end with justify content flex end. Then there are other things I could do. For instance, I can decide to put a space in between them with space between. So justify content space between. And what that does, it puts space in between them. So in between, in between, and in between. Then we also have space around, UND. Now that what that does is that it puts a space around them, even before the border or in between them and the border. Observe. So it has a space here and also has space in between them. That's what justify content does. Then we also have space, justify content, space evenly. Now this one is a bit tricky, but if you look at the space between the item and the border, this which is here, and the space in between items, you will notice that they are not equal. Yeah, they are not really equal. So what justify content evenly does is that it makes sure each space in between the item and the border, each of them, that's each space across the main axis is equal. So this is just what space evenly, and if I refresh it, you see that the space that is here is equivalent to the space that is here, is equivalent to the space that is here, and is equivalent to the space that is here across the main axis. So that's about spacing items across the main axis. Now we're going to talk about spacing items along the cross axis. Remember, the cross axis is from top to down, the main axis is from left to right. So we're going to talk about spacing items along the cross axis. But first of all, let me remove this property. Height is not really needed. Now, the height wasn't really needed per se, but I used them to showcase the example I wanted to give with the justify content align, so that is much more obvious. But you can decide to put an height there or not, depending on how you are styling. But for this next example I want to give, the height is not needed. So now, when I remove the height, this is what you have now. This is what you have now. Let me show you that when the height was there, it was like this, and when I remove the height, this is what we have now. Now let me add more content to this item 2. I'll bring it down. Then I can decide to generate sample text, something like lorem. Now lorem ipsum is just a way of generating random text that we can use to practice with. So I can generate 10 random text, that's lorem 10. Then for the item 4, I want to generate another random text for the item 4, and for this one I'll target more of lorem 20. All right, then refresh it. Okay, so I added 3 text to the 10 text to this and 20 text to this, and you can see that item 1 and item 3 automatically expand to fit in the container. Now this is the default value of the when we are trying to align items across the main or along the main axis. The default value is stretch is the default value. That's why you can see that when I expanded on this, all of them will try to catch up, and when I expanded to this length, they would also try to catch up to fit this length. If it was just this, they will try to catch up to fit it at this level. So this is the default value when we are trying to align across the cross along the cross axis, the stretch. Now we can decide to give it go to our styles and just move this and give it a value of align items flex start, just like we have it in the justify content, and you will see that they will shift up to the top. You see, they will all shift up to the top, aside from item 4, which fills the whole blanket. Now they're not trying to catch up with item 4. The default value was stretch, so they will just stretch up to fill the container. But now that I've given it a value of flex start, they will go up. Remember, when we are aligning across the main axis, start means they will start from here, but when it's along the cross axis, start means they are pushed to the top, except for this one that has a lot of text that is has it, that's why it has to come down. Now if I give the value of center, align item center, observe they all try to align center across the vertical or cross axis. They move to the center. And then if I give it a value of flex end, they will come down. Just as we have flex end in justify content, they will go to the end. Let me showcase that now. So flex end, voila. So the last property we have for align items is baseline. Baseline. Now observe what that does. Now, baseline is based on the text of the element. It's not the same as stats as flex stats. It's not the same. The baseline property is based on the text, the baseline of the text, this text in the element. So if I decide to go to my HTML and I remove this whole text here and this one here as well. Now I'm going to target this third item here. This third item here. And I'm going to use the nth child, which is a pseudo selector I talked about, the nth child for the third item. And I'm going to give it let me first give it a background color of red as my AI suggested. Oh, I didn't put my full stop here. I give it a background color of red. This is it here. Now I'm going to now increase the font size to say 3rem. 3rem. Now when I increase the font size to 3rem, the baseline, that's the text, the baseline of the text is around here. Let me just remove this number 3. All right, so the baseline of this text, this is it here. So all elements will now be aligned at the baseline of the text. That's the largest text now. This is it here. This is the baseline down here. So they are all going to be aligned along these axis, even the one that is up to corner. If I would decide to reduce it to 2rem, this would shrink and the new baseline will be lower and they will all align along that new baseline. Observe. So they are all aligned. Now this is different from flex start or other kinds. If I change it back to flex start, see, flex start is just at the top, but baseline is based on the text, the topography, the font size, or basically the text that is there. Let me just increase this again. This time let me give the font size of 5, which is large. So wherever the baseline is of this text, that is where you will find them. This is the base size now. So they are now along this baseline. So that's the 3 main, those are the properties of the align items along the cross axis or the horizontal axis. So I've been talking about the main axis and the cross axis. Let me quickly reset all this first. I'll comment this out and I'll comment this out so we can get back. Let me also remove this. So we can get back to our default arrangement. So I've been talking about the main axis and and the and the cross axis. Now, and I said by default this is the main axis, and by default this is the cross axis. Now I can decide to change that arrangement and do something like this. Flex direction. I can decide to change it to column, but the default setting is row. This is the default setting. You see, if I do it like this and I refresh it, nothing happens because that's the default setting, and it sets the main axis to be like this. It starts from here, from the left to the right, along this horizontal plane, and the cross axis is from top to bottom along this horizontal plane. Now, if I do something like this, like a row reverse, it would reverse the main axis to start from right to left, meaning that this would be our start. This would not be our start, and this would not be our end. So by default, this will be start. And if I do something like justify content flex end, it will not go here. But before, when it was still row, this was our start and this is our end. So when I said row reverse, the main axis would now flow from right to left, meaning this will be our start by default. Then everything else still applies. Space between, space evenly, and space around is still the same thing. It's still the same concept. So that's it about row reverse. Now, if I want to change it that the main axis would now be from to bottom, top to bottom, and then the cross axis would now be from on the horizontal plane from right to left. I can decide to use. Let me comment this out first. I'll refresh. Mm, mm. I can decide to use flex direction column. So you can see that it changed back to the vertical the way it was originally. But although it looks like how it was originally, when I put a group of grid together, when I put a group of grid items together, this is how it would look like. But it is not in a grid fashion. It is still Flexbox. The only difference is that I've changed the flex direction, making top to down now now the uh the main axis, and then right to left the cross axis. So when I do something like this, um, justify content flex end. So normally, flex end would push our content from the left hand side to the right, assuming this was still the main axis, and all this list was stacked in an horizontal fashion. But we've changed the main axis to go from top to down in a vertical fashion. So when I use flex end, the direction is not this way. Let me increase the size of this container. So first of all, let me increase the height of the container to height of say 500 pixels to allow some room for me to show you what I'm talking about. When I refresh this, it comes down because there's extra space now. Let me comment out this flex end and show you how this is how it originally was. Then flex end, which would typically carry us this way, is now carrying us this way. So you can see the change in alignment. Then when we want to when we use align items, typically align items was what we use to align ourselves about the vertical axis. But now align items will now be used to align our items along the horizontal axis. So everything is now switched. Everything is now switched now. It is switched. So when I use align items, first of all, let me change this to flex end and comment this out. You would observe that this is now moving from right to left, other than when it used to use from top to bottom. Now refresh. Okay, this is still intact. So this is what we are getting now. The reason why it went down is because I applied both, which you can do as well, depending on how you want to style your object. So that equally works as well. So this is now reversed. It's now reversed. Now the same way I reverse the row, I can also do change the flex direction to column. But before I do that, let me first remove this. This is where it was now. Originally, this is where it was, the start. Now I can reverse it to column reverse, same way I did the row, and voila, there we have it. So it is now being reversed, and then my flex end, my my justify content flex end would now come up here rather than it being here. So everything is now being reversed, and that's one of the effects of using Flexbox. I know it's a lot to take in, but as you practice it, you would begin to understand some key concepts. All right, so let me switch things back to the default. I'm going to remove this line of code so that everything goes back to row. Okay, yeah, so this is how it's let me see. Yeah, this is how it's you typically use for row. Another thing I want to discuss is the flex basis. Now we can decide to use width, the width, but the thing about flex basis is another way of specifying your width. Flex basis. So if I can see 100 pixels and decide to clear this out, so it's the same thing. It's the same thing. When I move this, so if I move it, this is how it is normally. But I can, when I apply the width, this is how it is. But the difference between flex basis is that it is more native to Flexbox. When I decide to change the row to justify the flex direction rather, when I decide to change the flex direction to column, you see that the flex basis width, that flex basis flows with it. It's more native to Flexbox. So the flex basis I specify for it applies both to the flex direction when it's in row and when it's in column. But if I decide to use just width is only for horizontal fashion, left to right. It does not apply in this same. So this is what you get. It's the same width you get when it's in the flex direction row and the flex direction column. So as you can see, if I decide to change this to row, ROW, this is the width. This is the same width you are getting for the row as is from left to right. Then when I change it to column, it's still going to be the same width, but it's not just going to apply in the horizontal fashion. See, it's still the same width. Still the same width. Yeah, it's still the same width, but it's not going to apply in the horizontal fashion. In the meantime, when I use flex basis, let's first start with the row. LW. Initially it's the same width as initially flex basis seems the same as width as normal width, but when I now change this to column, observe that it represents that same width on the vertical axis. So you can see. So moving on, I'll be using flex basis because it's more native to Flexbox. So let's just get rid of this. And all right. All right. So now I'm going to take it back to its normal. Just get rid of this so we can get the normal flow as is. Okay. Okay. And reduce this width to say 200. Container width to 200. All right. So next, I want to speak about responsive design, and I'm going to talk briefly about it for this example I want to show, but I'm still going to release a different video going into depth or talking more about responsive design. Now, responsive design is the ability of your website to appear in a well presented or suitable manner across different screens. So we have the mobile screens, the tablets, and the mobile screens, the tablets, and so forth, and the likes. So it's the ability of the website to appear well. So in the good old days, again, people would typically create a different website for laptops or desktops and a different website for mobile. But now, yeah, I guess CSS has evolved to the point where we can make our websites optimized for both mobile and laptop view. Now, observe this. First, let me increase this flex basis to say 300. Okay. Now, if I decide to or you know what, I don't need to do that. If I inspect and I check the mobile responsiveness of this, you can see that at this point, this block are not looking so nice. Maybe at, let's say this is a laptop view or desktop. As we begin to, and we have some extra space here. As we begin to go down, it's still okay. But at a particular point, usually on mobile screens, these box are not looking so nice. So what we can do now is that we can apply a property called flex wrap to the container. Flex wrap, and by default it's at the value is no wrap, but we can now use wrap. And I feel like I should make these items. Let me try and make this item the font size so that you can see the values for REM, and give it a color of white. I hope that is very bold for us to see. So I've given it a value of flex wrap. So when it gets to a certain breakpoint, it starts to stack. See, it starts to stack because this is the width I gave it, a flex basis of 200 pixels. So rather than it shrinking, it starts to stack. This is an overflow. Don't worry about this for now. That's not the point. So it starts to stack on mobile screens, and then those on large screens can see it on a vertical axis. So that's the basis of things like flex wrap, so that it starts to stack on mobile screens. Then we can also give it a value of wrap reverse, flex wrap reverse. At this point, it will wrap, but in an opposite manner in between. This is 1, 2, 3. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. It will now switch places. You see, it's wrapping, but in an opposite manner. It's going up. So that's the difference between wrap and wrap reverse. All right. Then one last thing I want to discuss on is another property called flex grow and flex shrink. You see that we have extra space here. Depending on how large your screen is, you might have extra space here. What flex what flex what flex grow does is that if I apply it to a particular element, as we can see here, this item now, all the property I'm specifying applies to all items here, but I can just decide to specify a particular property, maybe margin font, to just a particular item on this list. Let me put this in order first. All right, so item 1, item 2, item 3, so they all have a, sorry, this was something I added back, but I've cut it out. So item 1, item 2, item 3, and item 4, they all have a value, a class of item. So this style here applies to all of them, but I can decide to apply them one at a time if I choose to, and which I will do for a particular property in a moment. But just know that the flex grow property, it defines how fast an item should grow to take up a space when there is extra allocated space to use, and the flex shrink defines how fast an element should shrink when the spaces are minimizes, when there is a minimum or less space within the container. So that's the difference. Now I'm going to pick an item, and I'm going to target the first child. The first child is this item 1 here, and I'm going to give it a flex grow of 1. Observe how this one will now grow because there is extra space here. So it has grown because there's extra space here. Like, and you can see that so I can decide to increase this value to 2, and it will grow 2 times faster to fill up the space. I can give this one to item 1 2, and I can give item, okay, let me just do that now. Now I copied that below, and I'm going to give it the last child. These are what we call pseudo classes. All right, so I'm going to give this item 1 2. So this one will go 2 times faster to fill up the spaces. This one will go 1 time faster. So this one definitely will be larger than this one. And if I refresh this, you can see that this one has grown. That's the last item, and this is the first and last child. And this one grows 2 times faster, which is why it's longer. And this all happens when there is additional space. If there is no space, okay, I still have the flex wrap item on. So when this one goes down to the next line, it would also it will still grow. But when they are on the same line, this one would grow faster until there's no longer additional space for them to take up, and they take up their original width, which was specified by flex spaces. Now the same thing applies for when we do something like flex shrink. So rather than flex grow, we do flex shrink. Shrink. All right, so now when we decide to shrink this, I gave it a shrink value of 2, the first child. So this one would shrink faster when they get to a point. Let me first Sorry, let me first refresh this. So when it gets to a point where there is no longer allocated space, this one will shrink faster. Item 1. Oh, sorry, I have to remove this flex wrap so that it doesn't wrap well and I can show what I'm talking about. Refresh. So as I begin to shrink, at this point where there is no longer allocated space, this one begins to shrink faster than the rest. As you can see, let me increase it so that it is more obvious. Let me round this up from 2 to 8 and refresh. So you will observe this one item 1 will shrink way faster. Can you see that? Can you see that it's the only one shrinking? The others are shrinking as well, but this one shrinks way faster than the rest, as you can see. So that's it. Now I can decide to apply just like I did for the flex grow. I gave item 1 a flex grow of 2, I think, and this one a grow of 1. I can decide as well to give the last child. Let me say the last child will be item 4, a flex grow of 4. So this one will shrink half as fast as this. Now let me put that in practice when I bring it. So this one, it's a little bit, if you can keep your eyes in two places, or better still, let me make this 8 and this one 10. So if you can monitor these two, this one will shrink faster, 10 times faster, this one's 8 times faster. So I think the results are the same, but you will notice that these two are the ones shrinking. This one first, then this one second. So yeah, that's just it about the flex grow and the flex shrink property. Now, before I close this up, I want to speak on the a shorthand property of flex. Let me first move this. So rather than saying flex basis, flex grow, flex shrink, we can use a shorthand property of flex. Now, this takes in 3 values. If I highlight it, you'll see it. The first value signifies the flex grow, the second value signifies the flex shrink, and the third value can be the flex basis. So if I say something like flex 1, that is the flex. Okay, you can see that my AI is catching up. So this represents flex grow and flex shrink and a flex basis of 300 pixels. So this is going to take a grow of 1. If I refresh this, you will still see that this one tries to fill up the space because I've applied flex grow, and this is a shorthand property of doing it. If I decide to put this one as 0 and give this one a flex shrink of 2, they will all start out with the same width, but as I try to shrink it down, this first one would reduce first. So it's still the same thing, but this is a shorthand of doing it. I can also decide to increase this one on its own to 500, and you will see they will all start out with the same width, but this one would be bigger because it's 500, while the rest share 300. So that's it. So that's all I have to say about Flexbox, the shorthand property. Now, this shorthand property, it's similar to when I say something like for instance, now this border per se, this is a shorthand for border because I can decide to do it like this: border and width. As you can see, this is the border width, and I can put that out and give it a 5 pixels. I can also decide to go border style. You can see border style here, and give it solid, and do border color and give it black. So what I have done in this 3 line is the same thing as what I've done here in 1 line. So this is a shorthand property. So it's the same concept, just like the margin as well. I can do margin top, margin bottom, margin right, margin left. But this is a shorthand that makes me apply margin to top, bottom, right, and fourth, like I explained earlier. So that's the same concept when I talked about the flex this flex item. It's the same concept when I talked about this flex item. So it's basically the same concept. So that's all I have to say about Flexbox. I'll be releasing a video where I try to build a website, and we will be using Flexbox. We are going to use Flexbox a lot when it comes to building websites. And like I said earlier, Flexbox is for one dimension layout. CSS grid is for two-dimension layout, which we would not talk about for now, maybe sometime in the future. But that's about it. When we build websites, Flexbox is really important for layout. And my next video, I'll be building a website, and we can see Flexbox and all we have talked about in CSS in practice. So watch out for my next video. Now, in time, I'm going to be releasing a LinkedIn articles that goes in depth or talks about more of the properties of Flexbox. So look out for that. I'm going to attach it to the description of this YouTube video, so that after watching this video, you can also decide to explore more of the different properties we have about Flexbox. Properties such as the order property or the flex swing property. So it just helps you build on your knowledge of what or to build on what this video has taught you, because this video covers a lot. It covers the core basics of Flexbox, and I believe with this video you can start making out layouts on your website. So that's pretty much it. If this video was helpful to you, make sure you like it and also subscribe. Thank you so much for getting to this point at least. Goodbye.